December 15th, 2005, Chloe Martin was born. I'm not exactly sure how my life went on the roller coaster it did. I could just show you the PowerPoint I made in all my phases growing up, but I don't think anyone is mentally prepared for that. I've always been rambunctious. When I was young, aside from butting heads, for as long as I can remember, I've been in love with the arts and making stories. I've been singing in shows and recitals for 11 years, getting better as the years go on, wanting to be an actress and a singer. And I also used to make little stories and videos with an all-toy cast. I was doing pretty well academically, but I had been going to our private Montessori school my entire life, and I didn't want to be hit with the brick that is public middle school, having no experience in that setting, so it was my decision to leave the comforts of my school to change into a public elementary for 5th grade. I was pretty gifted in English and all subjects except one, math. And I came to the brutal realization that I barely knew math. For those of you that don't know, Montessori schools are self-taught using materials with the help of guidance, and little Chloe just simply decided to not care about math. So I went into school and almost immediately had to drop down a grade to 4th, but even then, the teacher was cruel and I was still not learning at their pace or getting any better, so I dropped out. I then had to cram 2 years worth of lessons and half a year in quote-unquote homeschooling with my mom. After that, it was time to see the real world again. Middle school. Middle school is when it all started to go haywire, but at least now, academically, I was doing pretty good for myself. I made friends, got into my first real relationship, if we're ignoring whatever kindergarten Chloe did. However, that stubbornness and refusal to let things slide didn't always work in my favor, so I would constantly defend myself or others even if it got me in trouble, which is both good and bad. Sometimes I just needed to be a pacifist to get by easily, but I was too headstrong for that, so most of the guys hated me. Keep in mind, I had the same kids every class. But when I was finally feeling at home at Trail, my brother got accepted into a soccer school all the way in Casa Grande, Arizona. So, from beaches and palm trees to mountains and sand. Needless to say, I wasn't very excited about having to leave, but not so long later, there I was. In the middle of nowhere, But besides being new to the state, I was also 2 weeks late into the new school year off the get-go. Everyone wanted to either befriend me or mess with me. I feel like when I first got there, I was still in a bitter mindset about this being my life now, and I had this overdone properness and seriousness to me, which I feel like comes out when I don't feel at home in a group. But despite that, I let loose a little and made a friend. I spent most of the period rambling and gushing about a show I liked to them because they asked about it. They didn't even watch the show, but listened anyway, and from there on, I made my first friend group. But unfortunately, not everyone was as nice and inviting as they were. Without telling the whole story, I accidentally agreed to dating someone who had no interest in dating me, and from it, him and his entire friend group decided they hated me with a burning passion and never stopped going out of their way to bother me. Like this one time where everyone in class and school just started jokingly saying to me or other people, "Drop the beat." And I had no idea what they were referencing, but I didn't really think of anything of it until an old friend texted me a video from an old account of mine, some cringy video Tiny Chloe made. And it all horrifyingly clicked. My entire school found my old cringy accounts and was very publicly making fun of it, telling me head on later. But like anything, I just had to push through and recognize that some people are just desperate for attention and so bored that messing with others is the only way that makes them feel powerful in their sea of insecurities. Anyway, I also at some point made a friend who I'll call Chaz. One day I was at his house to do a class project together, and then out of the blue he told me he likes me through text, even though I was right in front of him. Respectfully, I tell him I see him as a friend and that I like someone else right now, and he goes quiet. Keep in mind, I'm stranded in his house with the project we're supposed to do. Needless to say, it was a painful experience, but unfortunately, it didn't end there. He proceeded to ask me out incessantly and began lying repeatedly. First, he lied about small random things, then he lied about my crush dating someone, but as time went on, he started to guilt-trip me into dating him, going on about how he was going to hurt himself because of me, how I ruined him, and then worst of all, he lied about having cancer. Stage 5 lung cancer. Just to guilt-trip me into dating him. Claiming the supposed 2 cigarettes his uncle forced him to smoke gave him immediate cancer. I have no clue why I let myself try to believe him, I just wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. So, after a month of trying to be a pacifist, I had enough and confronted him. Even though it was a hard conversation, sometimes confrontation is the only way to fix a problem. Letting things fester and worsen helps no one. Moving on. Even though I had friends, not all of them were real friends. Some so-called friends would always exclude me, even though I was right there, I wasn't acknowledged, and if I was the butt of the joke. It's the type of passive-aggressive jokes that make fun of your body or you in a personal way, but the type of joke where everyone else laughs and you feel the need to laugh with them because why wouldn't you? They're your friends. Surely they didn't mean it like that. Maybe you're just sensitive, or maybe they're right. And if or when you tell them about how that made you feel, they brush it off or tease you again. So you're back to feeling uncomfortable and not at home in what's meant to feel like a family. And the more you let them walk over you, the more confidence you lose. That is, until you finally do what's right. Leave. If you're surrounded by people who couldn't care less about you and wouldn't defend you if someone was attacking you for no good reason, what's the point of staying and letting them affect you? And despite being heavily put down by more people than I want to think of, while it made me overthink every decision I make, it only made me more audacious somehow. I was the yearbook president, I was on the NHS, I did the morning announcements, I ran for SGA president, and would have won if my competition didn't lie about being able to give them vending machines. But it's okay, because he was impeached later and I became the secretary instead. If I hadn't moved to Arizona, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Looking back, I feel stupid for how I handled having to leave Florida because it was so much harder having to leave Arizona, and coming back was a whole other can of worms. It was in the middle of the pandemic moving back, so for months I was pretty alone. But with all that free time, I really got back into my favorite shows and their fandoms, and one day I just had the idea. What if I opened my own embroidery shop? It would help fund film school and also be a sort of love letter to what inspired me into storytelling. So I did. I made a business plan, bought the machine, found a business partner and an artist, and got to work, under the name Sugarline. I've learned a lot about patience and persistence through it. I'm also so glad I chose the electives I did. I already knew I wanted to go into TV production since before I joined the class, but that little TV1 online class changed my whole view of it. Needless to say, I'm staying in that line of business. I also joined drama again. I hadn't done it in a few years and decided to come back to it. Through it, I've made my closest friends, and it also pushed me out of my comfort zone more times than I can name, so I've definitely grown my confidence. But speaking of confidence, coming back to Florida humbled me. From constantly being asked out and everyone knowing me to being a romantic and unwanted disaster till late sophomore year. Also having to find a group from scratch all over again and failing a few times. But regardless, I got through it. I found out more on who I am and who I want to be and what I'm working towards. I hope you enjoyed this rant. I know it wasn't every story and I didn't go into sophomore year, but if I said every story, we'd be here all day. But anyway, thanks for listening. Bye.